Art of shepherding. It is during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light, says Aristotle. Dear friends, recently Pope Francis made a profound and insightful speech in Juba Cathedral during his meeting with the country's bishops, clergy, and religious. I realized his words have a lot to do with our way of leading people and being with people. Pope stressed the people not think that we are at the center of everything and not to rely on our own talents because everything we accomplish comes from God. He is the Lord and we are called to be docile instruments in His hands. He asked pastors there to be compassionate and merciful, not overlords or tribal chieftains. And then he pointed to a fundamental attitude of those who are called to serve their brothers and sisters, that is, through intercession. And he went on to show us the way to intercede. As the Son of God did by becoming incarnate and dying on the cross, he came down to raise us up. As the Moses did interceding for the people, putting himself inside their history to bring them closer to God. And interceding, not simply praying for someone, he says. It means to step in the middle, to take a step so as to put oneself in the middle of a situation. Pope here is speaking from the heart of his own experience as a pastor who prays, who cries out, who intercedes, who steps into the middle to help his people. And this is precisely what is required of pastors to walk in the midst of the suffering, in the midst of tears, in the midst of the hunger for God and the thirst for love of their brothers and sisters. Pope went on to say that our first duty is not to be a church that is perfectly organized. Any company can do this, he says. The Church of Christ stands in the midst of people's troubled lives and that is willing to dirty its hand for people. And its pastors exercise their ministry, walking in the midst and alongside our people, learning to listen and dialogue, collaborating as ministers with one another and with the laity. Together, not as privileged members of a caste, together following the Master and making room for him, not as functionaries of the sacred or as managers who rely on structures and strategies. Jesus left the comfort of heaven and came into our universe, our pasture, to smell like sheep. Jesus sweated like we do. He walked our pathways, braved our wounds, faced our temptations, and shared our struggles. He died to save his own. Now, do we dare to be so? Bible says, "My sheep know my voice." Christ's faithful lambs know his voice because they are used to the sound of it. Because they commune with him often and hunger for the words that fall from his lips. They recognize the tone and rhythm of his precious words. The question is, do they recognize our voice? Or do we confuse our people? We are called to pasture the flock, to give and to be. May we have the grace to walk in the midst of sufferings, in the midst of tears, in the midst of the hunger for God as docile instruments in God's hand. May the people find us beside them in their struggles, in their search for meaning in life. May we identify the lost sheep from our flocks and go in search of them. May we rejoice in ministering them and never allow one to go astray.